Welcome to another amazing episode of Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Connor, your host, also known as the Private Money Authority. And on this podcast, this is where we talk about raising private money without ever having to ask for money. Well, today I've got an amazing guest to join me, and quite a background does he have. His expertise, in addition to private money, I mean, for goodness sakes, he's raised $20 million in private money so far. But in addition to being an expert in raising private money, he also has expertise around the topics of creative deal structuring, wholesaling, flipping, landlording, all the way to lending and investing, throughout the years. Now, he's been involved in thousands of transactions in his career. And what really sets him apart, like myself, is his love for people and his love for their success. He co founded a private lending company and a real estate acquisition company. In addition to that, he founded and ran the Central Wisconsin Real Estate Investors Association. In just a moment, you're going to meet my good friend and guest, Mr. Derek Dombeck, right after this.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Connor.
Well, hello, Derek, and welcome back to the show.
Wow, thanks for having me back, Jay. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Enjoyed having you the first time. Glad to have you back again. And let's dive in first of all and talk about your experience in raising private money. After all, the name of this show is Raising Private Money. And I love to talk with other real estate investors that have raised their own private money, how they go about it, their favorite ways to raise private money, how they get the word out. But before we get to those questions, I'd like to hear your story, Derek. Again, I'd like for my audience to hear it, as to what was it that happened in your real estate investing business that even caused you to start raising private money?
Well, Jay, I got my butt kicked in the real estate market in 2007. And at that point, my credit took a hit. I was no longer bankable. And I had two choices. Either I learn how to, number one, learn how to get creative with deal structuring and also raise private money, take on partners, whatever it takes. And that's the very short abbreviated version. And I know we had gone into it in more depth on the previous show I was on. But the second thing I think that's important to note is learning how to actually talk to people properly. So as you had mentioned early on, you're not asking for money. People are asking you, how can I invest with you or through you?
And how do you create a space and that type of scenario to where they're asking you instead of you asking them?
For me, it's really simple. I just tell stories about deals that I've done in a manner that would lead them to ask more questions. So one example, and this was several years ago, a friend of mine, we were driving in a pickup truck and he was asking me about buying a house in his neighborhood. Him and his neighbor were talking about fixing it up and flipping it. And he had never flipped a house before. And I said to him, his name was Mike. I said, Mike, we went through his whole deal. We figured out that they were going to make about a 10% return on their money if everything went well. And I said, Mike, I pay my investors 10% for doing nothing. And they're in a first position mortgage against the property. And his next question was, are you looking for any more investors? I never asked him for money, but I led him down a path that I had already obviously had a preconceived conclusion that I wanted to happen. And the ironic thing is, I think people prejudge everybody else, right? We're always thinking, I got to go talk to the high net worth doctors, lawyers, high W-2 income earners. Mike and his wife, I didn't know what they had at that time. I just approached him and said, Mike, I've got a deal coming up. I need about $67,000. And so he funded that first deal. And I asked one question that I always ask. Mike, if I have another deal, should I call you? And he said, sure. So over a period of a year and a half, I put over $500,000 of his money to work. And that was just cash that they had in money market accounts, bank CDs. And I was able to take his return from an average of 2.5 to 3% up to about 8%. So we're changing people's lives as well.
Absolutely. You just said two things that are very, very important. Number one is you're not asking, right? You're sharing, telling people, what you do. And another very, very important thing that you said that I want to reiterate is you didn't prejudge. I mean, a lot of times the people that look like they got a lot of money are broke. And the people that are just walking around, ordinary people like us, are actually got extra cash laying around, or they've got retirement funds that they are not happy with those returns, which there's an important point. It's very important as a real estate investor, if you want to attract private money, and that is to establish a relationship with a self-directed IRA company. The one I recommend is questtrust.com out of Houston, Texas. And the reason that's important is when you're talking with someone that's got retirement funds and they're not happy with the returns they're getting, maybe it's in the stock market, maybe it's elsewhere. And when you learn that, well, it's very, very important to have that relationship, say with Quest Trust, to where you can introduce them to Quest Trust or a self-directed IRA company, to where they can move their funds over tax-free or no penalties, no tax consequences, and become a private lender. So I love your answer and your philosophy there, Derek. It's all about creating win-win scenarios. It's all about educating other people as to what this world is about. I've got 47 private lenders right now that are funding our deals, and not one of those 47 private lenders had ever heard of private money until I told them about it. It's all about putting your teacher hat on, which I call my private money teacher cap. You put that hat on and you start teaching them what it is. And now, they're wanting to become involved. And so you've raised $20 million in private money, Derek. What kind of real estate deals have you raised that money for?
Well, so previous to January 1st, I was a co-owner of a hard money lending company. And my former business partner bought me out of that because for me now, I'm in acquisition mode. I'm really enjoying the present market we're in. Some people are panicking. I think it's Christmas. So I raised a lot of that capital for the lending company. Now I'm raising capital for my own transactions, which are primarily residential real estate with some light commercial, and also we're looking at buying some existing businesses right now and RV parks. So that's where I'm currently doing.
Now, you just said something very interesting, Derek. So I want to go back to something you said just a moment ago. And that is, there's a lot of people out there panicking. They're thinking about, where is the real estate investing market going? And you just said you love this market. This is like Christmas. Why do you have that outlook in this market?
Well, because of what I went through in 2007, as markets shift, we start to see, for us that have been through some downturns or different markets, it's like knowing the end of the movie. And we can see things that oftentimes other people will miss. And I guess I call it a thinning of the herd. So the large number of real estate agents that we have, the large number of newer real estate investors that didn't really get educated, they just got in and possibly got lucky on some deals because anything that they were able to buy went up in value. They're going to fall by the wayside, and that's not ideal for everybody, but it is reality. It is business. And for me personally, I do a lot of creative deal structuring. So I'm, talking to people about taking over their debt or putting options in place, controlling property with leases, as well as just, flat out buying them with cash. And I would say right now, 75% of the leads that I talk to are going down the path of potential creative structures of some sort.
You just said something else interesting, and that is you like this market to where it's perhaps looking unstable to folks, it sort of clears the playing field, sort of gets rid of the other investors that are making stupid, crazy offers on real estate deals that keeps us from who knows what's going on to getting those deals. So I had a good friend recently say, my favorite time is when times get rough and tough because, again, it clears the playing field, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the follow the herd mentality. I like to go the opposite direction of the herd. So the last few years, people were chasing apartment complexes. I didn't even look at an apartment complex. I didn't see any reason to risk my money or my investors' money on a 4 cap or a 5 cap property, and especially using institutional debt, which personally, I haven't used an institution for any investment property since about 2011. So I like dealing with people, not institutions. And right now, that is very, very easy to do compared to the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, the reason I love dealing with people is because in this world of private money, we get to make the rules. The borrower, we're the borrower. And how do we make the rules? Well, we make the rules by actually, instead of getting on our hands and knees at the bank and putting our hands underneath our chin and begging for the bank to approve our deal and having to raise our skirt up and the banker's looking at our personal financial statement and et cetera, we make the rules. We set the interest rate. We set the frequency of payments. And, the difference on borrowing institutional money is instead of applying or asking for a mortgage, we're actually offering a mortgage. And, it's just it's a win-win scenario where everybody wins. The private lenders win. We win as the borrower. And I tell you, Derek, Carol Joy, my wife and I, we have received so many thank you notes and verbal thank yous from our private lenders, particularly our elderly private lenders. And they tell us that we have changed and impacted their retirement years by allowing them to travel, go where they want to, when they want to go. They've got a nice chunk of principal investment capital, but they don't want to touch the principal. They want that principal to work for them so they can, enjoy their retirement years. And you've probably experienced the same thing, right?
Yeah. In fact, I've got a good friend of mine. He's quoted to say it's inconvenient to be physically alive, but financially dead. And when you start talking people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s that didn't plan for their financial future, and they have their money sitting in anything that's getting less than 6-7%, they're losing money. I mean, inflation is arguably much higher than that, but they're absolutely losing money if they're tying up their money in a bank CD or anything small. So I've had plenty of people that send me Christmas cards, thank yous, the same thing. In fact, that first story I told you about Mike, he has referred me to other people, but he always says, Derek, you keep my money working first. It's okay if you talk to this person or that person, but promise me you'll keep my money working first. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and I've experienced the same thing. I say I've got 47 private lenders. Well, if you're starting out raising private money and working with individuals to fund your deals, you don't need 47 private lenders, for goodness sakes. All you need is 1 or 2 to start. And like you said, Derek, I mean, they're going to spread the words. Private lenders flap their lips and talk to their friends. I mean, there's probably not a private lender that I actually raised the money from that they didn't refer other people to me as well. And as a result of that, I actually have not actively raised private money in a long time because that foundational group of people that I actually taught about private money, then they just have referred other people to us, and those people have referred other people to us. And as a result, I got a problem. Right now, I've got $1.5 million approximately, what I call just sitting on the shelf from our private lenders that I have not been able to put to work. And they're in like what I call the queue. But I'd rather have that problem than having deals and no money.
Well, and the fact that you call it a problem, many of the listeners might be shocked by that, but it is actually a problem. And we had the same challenge when we were running the lending company specifically, because we either had too many loan applications and we couldn't fund the loans, or we had too much money sitting on the side and we needed more loans. And it's a balancing act for sure. It's a little different now raising money for my own transactions, because to raise money for a lending company, we can put it on the street within a matter of days. But now, as you mentioned, we have to kind of get people queued up, then find a deal that works for their scenario that they like, and hopefully they didn't go and put their money somewhere else. So there is definitely an aspect of timing, Jay.
Oh, that's for sure. And you just said something that reminded me of this. Here's one thing that drives me crazy. And you have been the person in charge of running RIAs, in the past. So I'm getting ready to share something that I know you've heard. You've probably heard it over 100 times. I know I've heard it hundreds of times. And when I hear educators say what I'm getting ready to say, it absolutely drives me crazy, Derek. And that is, you've heard them say, oh, just get the deal under contract. The money will show up. I want to throw up. It's like, why are you telling people that? Is the money just going to like rain out of clouds or something? And so I practice and I teach the exact opposite. The money comes first. There's always going to be deals. There's always going to be deals. Get your relationships in place and have that ready to go. I mean, just think how much more confident you're going to be when you got money burning a hole in your pocket. How much more confident you're going to be. How many more offers are you going to make, knowing exactly, where the funding is going to come from. And quite frankly, Derek, I don't want to be going under contract on a deal to purchase, and I don't have a clue where the money's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's going to be egg on your face if you have to walk away from that contract, and that those same educators are just telling those students, well, just put, escape clauses in your contracts. And, if you can't find the money, at least you can walk away. Well, I don't know about you, but I spent a lot of years building a good.
Looks like we lost him, Jay.
It does look that way, unfortunately.
So maybe what we could do while we're waiting for him to come back on is you could talk a little bit about how oh, there he is.
Yeah, I could hear you guys the whole time.
Oh,
okay.
Welcome back.
Sorry.
Well, let's just pick up where we were, and our genius producer and team will get it all edited back in. So we were talking about these educators that say, oh, just get the deal in the contract, the money will show up.
Yeah, and the same educators are telling their students, just put escape clauses in your contract, and in the event you can't get the money or you can't close, you can walk away, no harm, no foul. Except, I don't know about you, Jay, I've spent a lot of years building a good name for myself, and I don't want that name dragged through the mud because I couldn't perform on a contract.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a guest on the show here recently, and we were having this conversation. And I said to him, why do educators, gurus, etc., teach that baloney? He said, I can tell you why they say that baloney, Jay. I said, please tell me. He says, because they're selling a course on how to get a deal under contract and how to find deals, and they don't have a clue how to tell you how to get the funding for it.
Absolutely. And they also don't care. I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them don't care. It's a numbers game. They know there's 5 to 10% of the people that buy their course that are actually going to succeed, and the rest are going to fail miserably. So I'm not a fan of any of those educators myself.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, like, when I educate real estate investors, the only thing that I teach and share is exactly what I am doing and what's working in today's market, So speaking of what's working in today's market, in addition to private lending, you are an expert in creative financing, creative structuring. And, people hear that phrase, but they really don't know what that means. So let's unpack that, Derek, in the time that we've got remaining. What is creative financing? First of all, what do you mean by that phrase or terminology?
My definition of creative financing is not the same as most people. To me, if somebody is using subject to, seller financing, options, leases, anything like that, that is just a form of financing. It's not creative. What I deem as creative is solving somebody's problem, a seller in this example, by stacking these strategies. So one quick example is I bought a house from a woman named Jan. Jan was behind on her payments. She needed $10,000 cash up front. She would take the remainder of her sale price in payments over time. The house needed a light rehab, and then my intention was to lease option it. So I needed about $20,000 of cash, catch up her payments, take over subject to her first mortgage. She carried back second mortgage at 0% financing for about 6 years. Then I contacted a financial friend, and I'm very nosy with what my financial friends have. And I said, Dan, I need $20,000 from your IRA. I'll pay you 6% interest only and 20% of the equity when I sell the property in the future. And we finished up the property, put a lease option tenant in there. 2 years later, the lease option tenants exercised. Everybody got paid off. We stacked about 5 or 6 strategies in that deal alone.
I love it. As you were sharing that story, it reminded me of a house that I bought on Country Club Road here in Morehead City. And the seller of the house owed $145,000. And they wanted $30,000 in their pocket over and beyond the payoff of $145,000. So I bought that house subject to the existing note. For the sake of our audience, that simply means you, as the real estate investor, you are agreeing to make the seller's mortgage payments, but you're not assuming the loan. That means the lender would have to approve it. When you buy subject to the existing note, that has nothing at all to do with the lender. The lender's not even involved in the transaction. This is an agreement between you and the seller. Seller's keeping the mortgage in their name, and you're making the payments. And you may ask yourself, well, what seller in the world would agree to leave the mortgage in their name? And I can tell you, it's a seller that wants debt relief is who it is. And so I bought this house subject to the existing note. $145,000 was the payoff. And then I borrowed, here we are stacking strategies, as you just shared, Derek. I borrowed the $30,000 from a private lender, and I put that private lender's note in second position underneath the first mortgage. And in addition to that, I knew I could sell the property quickly for about $250,000 as is. But if I put $25,000 in renovations in it, I could get $325,000. So what did I do? I bought it subject to for $145,000. I got a private lender for $30,000, which equaled the $175,000 purchase price. And then I got another private lender at $25,000 in third position. And now I got $200,000 in it with the rehab and sold it for $325,000. So you're absolutely right, Derek. Once someone becomes skilled and knowledgeable on the different strategies that you can use to fund a deal or to sell a deal, as you just mentioned, selling it on lease purchase, then you can combine these strategies. I appreciate you sharing that story, Derek.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like the equity participation structure that I use because it can keep our payments low as far as the interest. And they're participating in the resale of the property or the refinance of the property, which means if it happens quickly, their yield is significantly higher. But if it happens over time or a period of years, they're participating in the upside and the downside risk. And my investors love it. Right now I'm doing a fair number of deals with 10 and 10, 10% interest only and 10% of the net profits when I sell or refinance. And that's not a hard pitch to anybody with an IRA.
Absolutely. One reason, or one of the main reasons that people get involved in real estate as an investor, is they are interested in the wealth. They're interested in the freedom. And I know one thing that you talk a lot about, Derek, is your vision and loving your life. What is your vision? How do you love your life? Why do you talk about it?
Well, the Generations of Wealth, which is my platform, it's also my podcast. TheGenerationsOfWealth.com is for me a way to give back this knowledge and education that my mentors and my peers gave to us. And that's really where the name The Generations of Wealth came from. But it's not just about financial wealth. We do really focus on living our vision for our personal lives first, and then structuring our business to support our personal vision. And so live your vision, love your life is our tagline, because so many people go out there and they build or try to build a monster business. They work 60, 70, 80 hours a week with the hope that someday they'll be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor, but someday doesn't often turn out the way they thought it would. And maybe they don't have their health. Maybe they don't have their spouse or their kids anymore, or 1,000 different scenarios that could happen. So I truly want to live every day as if it's my last. And I could make a lot more money if I wanted to work a lot more hours, but I really do enjoy the time I spend with my family and my friends and doing things like this, Jay. I mean, just having awesome conversations with people like yourself and trying to spread the knowledge.
Be sure and check out Derek's website, which is www.thegenerationsofwealth.com. Again, that's www.thegenerationsofwealth.com. So what you're saying, Derek, is business owners and entrepreneurs should not be happy with the leftovers of their business for themselves, but they should actually, as you said, identify what vision and what lifestyle and how they want to live their life. And once that's identified, have the business support the vision and the lifestyle that they want. In the couple of minutes we've got left, Derek, share with the audience, what is part of your vision that you have that you are loving living?
Well, I had a few years ago, a peer or a mentor of mine had taken a 30-day RV trip with his family. And I told him how envious I was of him. And so he challenged me. He said, Derek, take 30 days off. And that was 2021 was the first summer I did it. My wife and I and our 3 kids took actually 5 weeks. And we've done so the last 3 summers. And if you truly actually do that and figure out what is important to you, it's absolutely going to change your life. I came back from that first trip, and I will admit I was a nervous wreck the first 2 weeks until I really realized that our staff and my support team and everything that we've built was working just fine without me micromanaging. I came back from that first trip and 2 things happened. We changed the entire structure of how we ran our business and my involvement in it. And the second thing was we committed to do that trip every year. And I would challenge all of your listeners, even though right now you don't believe it's possible for you to take 30 days off, write it down in your vision, block it out on a calendar, and figure it out. And it'll change your entire mindset.
What systems did you have to put in place prior to going on that first 5 weeks? Or better, maybe the better question is, what systems do you have in place now that allows you to go on a trip for 5 weeks? How much are you involved at all during that 5 weeks? Are you totally unreachable? What's that look like?
Well, the ironic part was we already had all the people in place that we needed. We just have to get out of their way and let them do their jobs and trust them that they can do their jobs without being micromanaged. Currently, again, I exited the lending business. And so when I was doing that the last 3 years, I had a business partner. We had a staff of about 7 or 8 people, and they were all very good at what they did. Right now, this year is going to be different. It's a little bit of a pivot, but my marketing team takes care of all the marketing. I have a full-time assistant who handles everything I don't like, which primarily is paperwork and scheduling. And I can I can work remote. And what I typically did, especially that first time, Jay, I blocked off 3 hours each morning of the 5-day work week for work. And we traveled with a fifth wheel travel trailer, and I live in Wisconsin. We traveled west, which means we were in different time zones. Essentially, I was done working before my family was even up and moving, and it worked out very, very well. So I'm not going to say that I didn't work at all, but I wouldn't have had to have worked. I enjoy what I do. So there's still a certain amount of time where I want to be talking to buyers, sellers, investors, all of the stuff that comes with our business.
Really what it comes down to is you identified what's really important to you, and you put a plan in place to actually realize it.
100%.
I love it. That's beautiful. Derek, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Again, be sure and follow Derek at www.the. There you have it. Another amazing episode of Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority. Be sure and follow if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, so you don't miss out on upcoming shows. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, be sure and ring that bell and subscribe, rate, and review. I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Raising Private Money.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/money guide. That's JCONNER.com/money guide. And download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/money guide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.